question time. It's No One Knows Peter Except You, of course, time, and we are going to discuss a couple of questions with a couple of games of Rocket League. First question is, how would you define genius? So, I have thought in the past that genius is, or intelligence, is sort of in line with academic performance. That's what I've been led to believe, maybe been misguided in a way, because I always thought at school, because I'm quite decent at maths, and I get the best, or some of the best maths grades, then that must mean that I am genius in some way. But since that time, since the dark ages of Peter being in school, thinking he was a genius doing maths, I would never call myself a genius, because I'm humble. I'm humble. Humble as you would never know in this world, outside of this universe. That's how humble I am. Like Donald Trump. I'm more humble than you would believe. So I don't think I'd ever call myself a genius, but when I thought of being a genius, thinking of intelligence, I thought about academic performance, and particularly maths, because I was quite that way inclined. So I used to think, I have a really good IQ. But actually, I got an IQ test with Mensa, and what I discovered is that my IQ is 108, which is pretty little bit above average, not in the genius hemisphere at all. And I think part of the reason was because I got 108. I was expecting like 160 or something, like Einstein. Part of the reason why I got such a low score was because it was based on words. It was based on how words link to each other and what makes more logical sense between this word that you've never heard of and this word that you've never heard of. And the part of the reason I did so badly was because I don't know many words. My vocabulary is not as extended as one might think. Well, I don't think people think that way about me at all. But it's basically, there were lots of words that I didn't understand, so I didn't get a very big score. Which is nothing to do with what I previously thought as a genius, as my maths days, where I thought academically gifted in maths is a sign of intelligence. So if I'm not very well versed in words, and I'm well versed in maths, what does that make me? Does that make me a half-witted plum? Or am I a fully witted tomato, because all that matters in tomatoes is maths, really, and plums are half-witted because English matters. So it's a very difficult analogy to get your head round, but essentially it's meaningless, other than there is more to potentially realise than maths. There is more out there. There is more ways of defining genius than maths. Because the test that I did get into Mensa on was a spatial awareness test, and linking like shapes and symbols, and making the link between the next logical step and the next pattern. And I got into Mensa because I got into the top 2% or something, which is ridiculous because probably half the people who go there get into Mensa. But yeah, and basically all I learned from that experience is that I got a Mensa membership and I got the magazines every month, but I wasn't particularly interested in them, and I didn't renew my membership. And I also, retrospectively, have learnt that there's more to being a genius than your maths ability, because my IQ, based on words is 108, just a little bit above average, but nothing to shout home about. Cry to the home environment about. So what this is basically the question that I never answered in its entirety, and I never completely got it right because I thought maths was it. So perhaps the thing about being a genius is you can't be a genius because there is no such thing. There are so many different aspects of intelligence. There's maths, there's English, there's geography, there's history. Let's name some more subjects at school, please. There's drama, there's social competence, there's being able to predict the future in a useful manner. And there's so much that can be impressive using your intellectual brain capabilities. And how would you define genius? I would define it as the I would define it as the golden standard that is never reached, because we all have failings in some areas and we are gifted in others. So are you a genius? Maybe the answer is yes, maybe the answer is no, but what is important to consider is that we are well versed in our own areas in life, and even if you're worse at doing maths than other people, and maths is meant to be one of your strong points, hashtag I didn't get into Cambridge, hashtag I like maths, hashtag what am I doing on Rocket League in the middle of the summer, I don't know. It's a difficult situation to be in. Am I a genius? Do I play Rocket League? These are different questions, and ones that should have an answer to, but don't, because I'm not really playing Rocket League if I'm not concentrating, and concede silly goals like that. Vote to forfeit, no thank you. We can get 2 goals in this 23 seconds. So how would you define genius? Like, I would say it's the inherent quality that we all have within us based on our different skill strengths. Because I believe that humans are so incredible, and even just having preferences, even just having opinions, shows that you're so much more well versed than the bunny rabbit. Oh, that's embarrassing. So the goal, I mean, not my reference to bunny rabbits in this ridiculous conversation about how everybody's a genius, because the word genius doesn't really quite fulfill the huge ways of defining different aspects of things that you're good at. And is Einstein a genius? Objectively, there may not be an answer to that. Maybe Einstein is just particularly good at physics, and particularly good at being a genius, because everybody is particularly good at being the genius in their own way. That's what I think. That's what we came on for. I think my hardcore approach is quite a liken to unbox therapy. Like, Will, Jack, did you get that? It's gone a bit hardcore enthusiasm for the views, which I don't fully get. Next question. How much does language influence the way you think? Now, this is an interesting thought experiment, because technically our brains have been, the same for quite some thousands of years. and our intellectual capabilities haven't drastically increased. So, that means a caveman who didn't have language was still as intelligent and would still think perhaps as deeply as a 21st century person who does have a language to articulate their thoughts. Like, without that language, because I have to say that I think a lot. When I think in a language. I speak in English in my mind, and I think it does influence the way I think. And if it didn't have that, then I would have a more sort of passive thoughts that I just sort of experience the moments without articulating how I feel at that present in time. What the heck am I on about? It's an interesting thought, and just by saying it's an interesting thought, my language has influenced the way I think. And would I have been able to think that it's an interesting thought without having the English there to fully articulate? Could I still have thought that? I think we're going for a halfway house where we're thinking absurd thoughts which don't make any sense. So we're halfway between not thinking and I think there are times in my life where my brain is being used and I'm not thinking a language, but I'm thinking. So when I'm watching the TV, I'm absorbing the information, absorbing the entertainment, and even though the TV is in a language, my thinking process about the program, I'm not articulating language. So in that way, it may be possible to have... Oh, let's try and score this. Oh no, I didn't. It may be possible to think without language. And like when I get up in the morning, I do not articulate how much I don't want to get out of bed. It's just a thought that I have. Like, oh, I'm in bed, I don't want to get out. But it's not necessarily articulated in language. So I think most of what we... I think language is quite a lot of the time that what is shown about our thoughts. It's a way of showing what we would have thought anyway had we not had that language to articulate it. Because I can imagine having a caveman environment and liking someone, but not actually articulating, oh, I like that person. You would just think, whenever you see her, it's like, oh, she's nice. But without fully articulating, oh, she is nice. But you can still have the sentiment of the thought that she is nice behind that, and you can still feel that. So I think how language affects our thought, I think it's possible that it doesn't actually add or take away to our ability to think. It may be just a way of articulating what we would have thought anyway. But there's no way of proving that. But I think a way of thinking about it is that in the past, when there wasn't language, we had the same brains. We had still evolved from homino ideas. We were Homo erectus, we're Homo sapiens. We were very evolved, and we had a big frontal part to our brain, and we had very skilled abilities to hunt and gather. And in that way, I think there's nothing different to our brain. So we still have this intelligence to think in complex ways, even if it's not at all articulated. But it could be that having thoughts is an actual detriment to our sophisticated being, because just being in the moment and absorbing things may be a better way, and the caveman hunter-gatherer person may have been more in the moment, and that might have been a better way of life. So I think that language could perhaps be a bad thing to our thoughts, making them complicated when they don't need to be. I like playing Rocket League. I'm going to play Rocket League, and I'm not going to articulate what I'm thinking. But of course, at the end of this question, how does language affect our thoughts? I think it does, to an extent, articulate what you would have thought anyway. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next episode of Rocket League Question Time. Hashtag 48 to come. Thank you for watching. Pleased to be here. Right, bye now. Alright now.